If I haven't met you already, my name is Alex Vines, and I'm Director of Area Studies and International Law at Chatham House, and one of your hosts today. We've kept one of the strongest sessions for you for this panel here for after lunch, so that we can have a good debate. This session is on value adding and beneficiation, lessons learned from De Beers. It's a panel discussion, and it, like everything else in this conference, is on the record, so it's not under the Chatham House rule. So what we're planning is to have presentations by each of the panelists, and then we'll open up for Q&A and clarification. So first of all, I'd like to introduce to you Paul Rowley, who's the Executive Vice President, Global Sightholder Sales of the De Beers Group. He was previously the Senior Vice President at Operations Midstream, where he oversaw the preparations for the migration of sales functions from London to Gaborone, and was acting Managing Director and Executive Director of the Diamond Trading Company in Botswana. So I can't think of anyone more appropriate to talk about this process and what the lessons learned are, and indeed, what are the lessons beyond Botswana of that beneficiation exercise than from Paul. So Paul, if you'd like to come up, you're very welcome.
Alex, thank you very much. Distinguished guests, good afternoon, and I would say hopefully all protocols observed. It's an interesting slot, this one, because obviously we come back just after a good lunch, and invariably we're all feeling a little sleepy perhaps, and what I would say is that it's a great topic in which to break us out of that. Beneficiation is something that's, as we'll hear, is very close to my heart, and certainly very close, I think, to the future diversification of Botswana, and beyond for that matter. What is beneficiation, though? It's interesting because perhaps we all have different definitions of the term. It basically became something from the iron mining industry back in the 1950s. And it referred to the separation of certain minerals from the ore in order to create a higher grade product. Well, that's not what we're talking about in diamond beneficiation. In fact, far from it. As the title says, it's all about value addition. In the diamond sector, we're talking about value addition in producer countries. Countries that physically produce the rough diamond product. Again, it usually refers to those downstream or even midstream linkages. It's interesting how we talk so liberally within our industry and expect people to understand all our terminologies. But when we talk of the midstream, we're really talking around the manufacturing sector. When we're talking downstream, we're talking about jewelry manufacture and, more importantly, the consumer. The one true source of value. What I think is really important, though, and this is a differentiator, it's what beneficiation isn't. And it's not a corporate social responsibility. It is really about sustainability. It's about creating industries within producer countries that will be here today, tomorrow, and in the next 15 to 20 years beyond the life of the natural product in which we mine. And that's a very different aspect. It's not a case of perhaps some of the programs we have which support education, extremely important, and we're taking it very seriously in De Beers Global Sightholder Sales in order to ensure that we have the right talent for the future. These are important aspects. It's not perhaps about health programs that we support through donations. I come back, it is about a competitive and sustainable industry. It's not about subsidies. It's not about an easy life. It's really about running a business and an organization that can compete on a world stage. And we should remember that diamond manufacturing is a global business. It's not something that's unique to any part of the world. It is scattered across it. And in fairness, particularly Botswana and Namibia, but even Southern Africa, is relatively new compared to the likes of the old guard of Antwerp, Israel, and the real driver and engine today, which is India. So what we have to look at is how do we compete in this global world? How do we ensure sustainability? And how do we ensure we can compete on a level playing field? How do we pay the same price as our competition and ensure that we're there today, tomorrow, and in the future? I'm actually really looking forward to the panel discussion. I'm hoping this is going to be very interactive. As I said, beneficiation is particularly close to my heart. I've been very involved within De Beers, in Southern Africa, and in Africa in general for a little over 25 years probably. It's been something for me about bringing diamonds home to some degree. It's about how do we ensure that we're getting the right value for every single carat that we mine. That's not, again, to subsidize, but to ensure. It's also to ensure, though, that we have successful future industries. I come back to the downstream element as well. How do we integrate? How do we ensure we have the right people with the right distribution, open up factories in our producer countries to ensure that we have additional value? And I come back, it is about creating additional value. I've been fortunate enough, as we heard, to head up. 4 years ago, I came out to head up DTC Botswana for a short period of time until the incumbent MD was fully up to speed. But it was all about that time when we were really pulling through the final stages of the 16 Sightholder factories to ensure that they were competitive before we moved into De Beers global Sightholder sales. It was all about the migration of our operations from the UK to ensure not only that we had the international sites coming to Botswana, but that we sustained the Botswana factories as well. Now, clearly, not everyone will be with us forever. It's a competitive world. But what we have seen over this period of time is factories open and factories close. And we would expect that. It is about seeing how we create jobs, but we create sustainable jobs. It's just about how we utilize technology to ensure that the playing field in which we operate is as level as possible. So during this discussion, I'm sure we'll analyze all the success factors, the risk areas, and what is beneficiation really going to require to be successful. I'll come back to what I've heard an awful lot of earlier today in some of the discussions is sustainability. We shouldn't underestimate that. Predictability. We're in a very volatile world, what we call a VUCA world. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's certainly ambiguous. And that's very much the same for the operations here in Botswana. Flexibility has been incredibly important. How agile are the businesses here? How agile are we as De Beers, as their major supplier, to ensure that we can get the right goods in the right hands to ensure that sustainability in the future? I believe that these are all going to be very important considerations, and I'm looking forward to a very interactive discussion piece with Q&As afterwards. So, Alex, thank you very much indeed.
Paul, thank you very much for kicking us off. Our next panelist is Jacob Thamage, the coordinator of the Botswana Diamond Hub. I'm very pleased to be back in Gaborone so that I can see Jacob again. It's been a while since I saw him in action. He leads the development of diamond beneficiation and related processing activities in Botswana as the coordinator of the Botswana Diamond Hub. Prior to that, he held several positions in Botswana's Ministry of Minerals, Energy and Water Resources, including working as Chief Mining Engineer, the Director of Mineral Affairs, and the Director of Mine Operations and Deputy Permanent Secretary. It was in that capacity I met Jacob for the first time and was most impressed by his professionalism and his vision. So I'm looking forward, Jacob, to hearing you on what you think are the lessons learned from De Beers for value adding and beneficiation. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not sure I can speak about the lessons learned from De Beers. I will, however, attempt to indicate where, as Botswana, we've come from in terms of the issues around value addition and indeed beneficiation, as Paul has mentioned. In most countries, you find that they have a mineral policy. In Canada, it's about 35 pages. In Namibia, it's 45 pages. In Botswana, you don't have that. We are actually working, my colleagues who are in this room, they are working on a document that would represent a mineral development policy as is often seen in other parts of the world. This does not, however, mean that we have been working in a vacuum. What the country has done years back was to synthesize into about 5 principles the mineral policies of this country. The first one being a desire to maximize economic benefits for the nation while enabling the private sector investor to earn a competitive return. The second principle that has guided us and which is relevant to this was to encourage the linkages with the rest of the economy for value addition or to expand value addition. The third principle is to create a competitive environment to stimulate private sector investment in exploration and mining. The fourth is to generate employment and training opportunities for the citizens of this country. Last but not least, it's to do all these activities with the proper safeguard to the environment. This is what has guided us as a country, and this is what has guided us way back. If you go back in our document and look at NDP, those who know, look at the NDP 4, you will find these written like I've just said that. So value addition has been with Botswana for a very long time. Indeed, when you look at the diamond industry, the first factory that opened in this country was in 1981 in Broadhurst. Sadly, it has closed early this year. But that's how far we have come. Then the second set of factories opened, one in Mulepulule, one in Siroe, deliberately to try and address employment creation in the rural areas. Sadly, the Siroe factory has also closed towards the end of last year. We've moved on. By 2004, we had about 4 factories, around 2 in Gaborone, 4 in the rural areas. 2006 had 12 more new factories, bringing that to 16, all in Gaborone. 2010, we moved to about 21. We have measured, in terms of successes of these factories, one, we used employment as a measure, as a stick. We used the value of diamonds cut and polished in the country also as another measure. We've used investment in the industry also as a measure of where are we going with regards to this. When one looks at 2004, we had about 570 people in this industry. 2013, which was a peak, we had about 3,800, just under 4,000. The figures have still subsided due to the challenges that we are experiencing. The value of diamonds that were made available for cutting and polishing, 2010, we had about 480 million. By the end of last year, we had about 900, just under a billion, 936 million worth of diamonds made available for cutting in this country. Investment in the sector from 2008 to about last year, it was well in excess of $100 million. So what have we learned, or what have been the challenges in terms of this industry? Going back to the linkages, because we expected, we wanted that by having cutting and polishing in the country, that we will see linkages developing. It has been mentioned, finance already. We have seen certain diamond financing banks set up here in the country, albeit one of them has since left. But we have 2 new diamond banks, specific diamond banks that are in the country here. Local banking has also taken some interest in funding this industry. We are excited about that. We've seen security logistics firms setting up here. What has been a bit sluggish is and which we believe and we've seen in terms of the lessons, it's crucial, it's the supply chain, the establishment of those equipment and other inputs suppliers to this industry. That our industry here, in terms, again, of competition, it has depended on equipment coming from all over the world with no local supplier. This has put quite a lot of strain in the industry. It has meant carrying a lot more inventory of these supplies than would normally be carried by other competitors elsewhere in the country where they do have the supply chain set up in the country. So this is something that we have seen as a challenge. I'm still not sure what really the tipping point is in terms of the level of cutting and polishing that has to occur in a country for that set of supply chain to set up. So in terms of learnings, really, we have seen that value addition is not necessarily an easy undertaking, especially given the prevailing challenges, and for some of the reasons I've just mentioned. We have seen and we still experience challenges and learnings in terms of really the ability of our citizens to get into this business. Citizen economic empowerment has been rather a very, very big challenge. This is a very cash intensive business, and with what has been mentioned about the banks being a bit more cautious in financing this business, we find it's very, very difficult for our people to come in. We believe still, as has been mentioned, there's no silver bullet. We just have to keep our noses to the grinding wheel, adjust and adapt our strategies to try and stay the course. I look forward to the discussions. Thank you.
Jacob, thanks very much for the presentation. Our next speaker began his career with Botswana in 1992 as a junior plant metallurgist. He's clearly a high flyer because Balisi Bonyongo is now the managing director of Botswana Diamond Company. Balisi, I'm looking very much forward to hearing your thoughts about beneficiation. Please, come here.
Thanks so much. I think the other speakers are very connected with the beneficiation mechanics and how it all happened. But I'm going to take a different line, and a line that is lessons around adding value through human resource development. I think the minister this morning made a statement that when he was asked a question around what does he believe is the one thing that he can mention that will lead to the growth of the economy going forward, he said, our people. The resident director of De Beers, Remroka, did mention a study that was done by Michael Porter in 2012 that alluded to a comment that was made by the professor that Botswana's competitiveness is far lower than the prosperity indicators we see. So it's a prosperous economy because it's cash flush with diamonds, but actually the competitiveness is very low. Question is, what do we lack? Do we lack the human capacity? Do we lack the human ability? What do we lack? And I'm just going to try and demonstrate that, in fact, this partnership that De Beers and the government of the Republic of Botswana went into very early on, I think paved the way for the development of gems, human gems that we have, I think, which I just going to take you through a few statistics to demonstrate that pre-independence, At independence, the educational infrastructure in this country was minimal to absolutely non-existent, and I think that's fact. The human capital was also grossly underdeveloped. That's fact. And it is estimated that in 1966, there was only about 40 university graduates. There's about 100 secondary school graduates in a population of 595,000 people. Records show that from 1960, there's only one doctor for every 48,000 people. This is good context to demonstrate what happened when the partnership was established from the vision of our visionaries, our forefathers. And I always talk about this partnership with a lot of passion because it has transcended 4 presidents. And clearly there's something about it. And what has it produced in terms of human capital? In the formative years of this partnership, there was a general agreement that human capital development must be an imperative. I think it's a big tick that this relationship in its initial years decided to do that. In 1969, this company sponsored the first 4 students to obtain technical skills appropriate to the mining industry. That was the start of a major human capital development program. Again, fact, small, humble beginnings. But this company initiated and the partnership initiated this. To date, this program boasts of over 1,000 graduates, some of now who hold leadership positions in government, in business, and in society. I'm sure in this room, many can raise their hands and demonstrate that, in fact, we have gone through the scholarship program that Botswana established during those early days, and I'm one of those people that stand today as the chief executive of the company. So there is a lot that happened in those days, and these graduates, they span from doctors to catering to education, teachers. We literally sponsored everything. So I think this partnership needs to be given commendations for such foresight. Botswana also runs an apprenticeship training school at Orapa, which dates back to 1973. By the end of 2014, over 1,000 artisans had graduated from the Orapa Technical Training Center in a variety of trades. And I'm talking here from fitters to electricians to mechanicians, boiler makers, heavy plant mechanics. For those of you who know mining, without these individuals, you have no mining. These are the people who make it happen. So, in fact, we have become the source of labor in these trades to most of the mining companies that have been starting lately in the country. What a partnership. I think it's important that needs to be noted. In 2014, the Ministry of Education and Skills Development adopted the Orapa Training Center's artisan training curriculum. This is now the government saying we need what the Orapa did in 1973, and we need that to be piloted in our government training technical colleges. As I speak, 2 technical colleges are piloting this, and it's to be extended nationwide. And imagine what will happen if this is extended nationwide. It means our colleges can now produce skills that are suitable for the industry for the first time, because we do not have government technical colleges supplying the mining industry now because of what we deem to be not the appropriate skills we need. The present Botswana Accountancy College, which is now running a very successful college in the country, was a successful joint venture between the GRB through the Ministry of Finance and Botswana. The college was the brainchild of Botswana in the late 80s through the then Botswana Accounting Training Center. So a lot of the accountants, chartered accountants we see in the country today, they came birthed out of this vision that was born early on in the years. So human capital development, which has gone through different stages, is a legacy that this partnership is proud and must be proud of leaving behind post-diamond mining in this country. I will not conclude my message without linking this to technology transfer. Aligned to the human capital development has been technology transfer. Through this partnership, Botswana have acquired world-class skills in managing cutting-edge technologies in open cast mining and recovery sorting processes. And we know that we have adopted and deployed De Beers proprietary technologies in sorting and polishing, especially recovery and sorting at our mines. And we know about the aquarium technologies, which were state-of-the-art and as we implemented them in those days. And today, many of our citizens are now managing, operating, and maintaining these technologies. So the skill base has been widened. So with the cutting and polishing industry now with us, this is bringing you a unique set of skills again, technologies that is going to help this economy grow and also improve our knowledge and skills, again, of our people. Now, what does it mean as I conclude? It means the following. As a country, we're well poised now to become a mining services provider and a mining knowledge economy in the SADC region, if not the rest of Africa. Thanks to mining, in particular diamond mining, which this partnership must take credit for. I think we're ready to now, where we are, to take mining into Africa, to take knowledge that we've acquired over many years through this partnership into the rest of SADC. And I'm looking forward to more constructive engagements during the rest of these proceedings, and we can explore this subject and many other subjects much more. Thank you very much.
Balisi, thank you very much, and indeed we're almost at the moment for more constructive engagement with Q&A. But first of all, we have Maria da Silva, who was the Senior Policy Analyst at the South Africa Chamber of Mines, an advocacy organisation representing the mining sector. Maria, also for your information, was a Deputy Director of South Africa's Department of Trade and Industry, where she focused on strategies to promote South African jewellery manufacturing as part of the department's broader initiative on industrial development. So some key insights there, I think, for this discussion. Maria, if you'd like to come up and give us your remarks. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My very brief talk will really be from the perspective of South Africa. And in terms of the lessons learned from De Beers, I would like to sort of point to the differences, perhaps, between what has been accomplished in Botswana versus what has or has not been accomplished in South Africa. As we are all well aware, the diamond industry is currently facing enormous challenges stemming from a combination of factors that have impacted on the industry and threatened to undermine confidence at all levels of the sector, from manufacturer to the consumer. Among the issues that the industry has to deal with, shrinking profit margins, mainly in the midstream of the diamond pipeline, difficulty in obtaining bank financing, particularly among manufacturers and polished wholesalers, high prices of rough diamonds, accumulating inventories, decreasing demand for polished diamonds, and declining polished diamond sales. To deal with these challenges, we need to adopt an approach of greater cooperation among industry players and other stakeholders. One of the themes at the recent Diamond Indaba in Johannesburg on positioning South Africa as the heartbeat of diamond beneficiation was for a partnership involving government, labour and business. Such a partnership is sorely lacking in the country, and it is therefore of little surprise that the cutting industry in South Africa has declined from over 4,000 participants in the early 2000s to just over 300 people currently. This figure will drop to a mere 200 when one of the major cutting and polishing factories in the country closes its doors next year. The decline in beneficiation in South Africa is in sharp contrast to Botswana, which employs a few thousand people in cutting and polishing factories and has 2.5 times the number of sightholders that are resident in South Africa. This success is largely attributable to the partnership between De Beers and government, which has led to the creation of an enabling environment that allows the industry to thrive. It is such an enabling environment that is missing in South Africa. The introduction of amended diamond sector legislation in 2006 has largely contributed to the downfall of diamond beneficiation in the country. The state diamond trader that was created to ensure an equitable and consistent supply of diamonds to bolster the cutting and polishing industry has not succeeded in its mandate. Manufacturers complain that there is little cooperation between the Diamond and Precious Metals Regulator and the industry, and there is no representation of diamond manufacturers in the established government diamond structures. Added to the problems of governance and legislation, which is not in sync with the needs of the diamond manufacturing industry, are the high labor costs in the country compared to productivity, outdated equipment, and shortage of skills. To reverse the situation, the government will need to facilitate conditions for the industry along the lines of Dubai and Israel in terms of tax incentives, and also India in encouraging the country's banks to provide credit. Without attractive incentives, global diamond beneficiators will not be enticed to set up business in South Africa, and relevant funding is crucial for new and emerging entrants. There are some positive developments that may yet resuscitate the cutting and polishing industry in South Africa, one of them being the proposed establishment by the government of an industrial development zone adjacent to the OR Tambo International Airport. This is expected to offer reduced corporate tax and possible exemptions from value-added tax and import tax on equipment brought in by tenants operating within the area. The proposed IDZ has long been on the cards, however, and if it is going to turn around diamond beneficiation in the country, it needs to materialize soon. Another initiative that should boost beneficiation and also address the problem of aging diamond cutters in South Africa is that of a De Beers initiative to nurture historically disadvantaged budding entrepreneurs to become future sightholders. This will also go a long way to transforming the industry, which to date is not representative of the demographics in the country. If the project has the backing and participation of government, then it will be a fine example of a partnership that can change the trajectory of the local beneficiation industry from decline to growth. Thank you very much.
Maria, thank you. Oh. Can we have the microphone? Oh, good, thank you. Thank you, panelists, for your opening presentations. We have about 15 to 20 minutes now for a debate, discussion, questions. So I'd like to invite you in the audience to be provocative. It's after lunch. This is your chance. So can I have a microphone right down in the front, please? I don't see a roving microphone. Yep. We'll go down right here at the front. Lady right in the front here, front row first. Sheila, if you can introduce yourself to us.
Yes, I suppose you have already introduced me. I'm Sheila, and I wear many hats, but I speak now from the perspective of the African Development Bank. I have both a question and a comment. First, a comment to Balisi's statements, which I agree with fully. And the comment is this: it seems to me that we did very well in skills development in mining. You didn't speak so much about sorting and valuing, but you know, of course, that we did also very well through BDVC, through the CSO days right up to recent. But I think that there's a gap in the cutting and polishing. We spoke this morning about youth and the expectation for employment. I'm not sure we're going to achieve this if the government, which is the custodian of education, does not invest in training people in skills in cutting and polishing. I don't know that we will achieve competitiveness and be able to drive the cost of labor down if, in fact, we leave it entirely to the cutting and polishing firms to do it for themselves. And I wanted to get a view from you of how, as a country, after 40 years, we don't have one school in cutting and polishing it, but somehow we think we can crack beneficiation, at least from an employment perspective. The second question I wanted to ask the lady from the Chamber of Mines in South Africa. I mean, we have a SADC diamond footprint. I've lost, okay, it's back. We have Botswana, we have South Africa, we have Namibia, we have Angola. I mean, do you see any logic at all in each one of these countries disaggregating itself and saying, we will have our own beneficiation policy here, and essentially diminishing what I think is inherently a much bigger stock if we take a much more regional? What are you saying to your members? What are you saying to your constituents in South Africa about competing with Botswana, and Botswana competing with Namibia, and Namibia competing with Angola in the space of diamond beneficiation? It seems to me the economics of it are fundamentally flawed.
Excellent questions. The lady just behind Sheila. Please do introduce yourself. You're most welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Malebo Mpugwa. I work for De Beers as head of HR. I just wanted to ask Re Thamage on the beneficiation side. I think you shared a lot around some of the achievements if we date back to 2004. But my interest is more in terms of long term. I just want to get an appreciation of what's the long-term view around how we can ensure that there's sustainable beneficiation. Because I do recognize, I think one of the statistics that you shared with us is with regard to youth employment. And the reality is we are actually seeing that we are getting quite a number of retrenchments and people losing jobs. So clearly the solutions that we used in the past cannot sustain us to be able to ensure that there's a step change around sustainable beneficiation. Just share some insights on the long-term view. Thank you.
Equally excellent question. Thank you so much. And let's get some gender balance. Gentleman right in the corner there, the tall arm.
Thank you. My name is Vikram Tellis, and I'm with Bonus Botswana. My question is really aimed at Jacob. Jacob, could you tell me what the mandate of Okavango Diamonds is? And when talking about value addition and beneficiation benefits from Okavango Diamonds, how has that gone beyond and above what De Beers are doing in Botswana?
Thank you very much. And, okay.
We have a question from someone who's watching the live stream, who's tweeted in, and this is for Jacob from Avi Kravitz from Rappaport. He said that you mentioned that the number of people employed in the industry declined from 2013, but he wants to know how many people are employed in the industry in 2015.
Thank you very much. Let's hold any other questions. So, Jacob, you've got two questions. One's about the mandate and one's about figures. Would you like to answer them? No, just sit down. It'll be easier for all of us. Yep. Is it working? Can we move the mics around?
Yep. It is working. Thank you. I think I could also attempt the one from Sheila about training in the cutting and polishing. Yes, one of the things that we have done when we started with the cutting and polishing here was to realize exactly that we don't have people that are trained in this. And the way we try to get around that is to try and make it easy for the expatriates who would come in and be trainers of trainers in the various factories. That is ongoing. The challenge is that a lot of these factories, they prefer to train and mold people so that they start with a culture that they want. We find that many of these people, it's not necessarily easily transferable from one factory to another. They are able to be transferred from factory to another. So for some reason, the factories still appear to be preferring their own in-house training. We have had conversations with the Indian Diamond Institute. They were going to set up here. We've had conversation with them since 2009. We've had an MOU signed, but that was an area where we were going to set up in OD and have that training with the institute in India. We have not yet given up. It's an area that we will look at so that they can come and set up and assist us here quickly moving along that. The long-term sustainability of beneficiation. When we started beneficiation, I think we focused so much on creating jobs. We focus so much on creating jobs. The feeling now is that we should really, if we are to go for sustainability, we should allow the industry to employ the best methods. And one of those is automation. If the industry goes for automation, that is an area where there is possibility for sustainability. Now, when you have automation, as Balisi said, you need a different set of skills. It's not saying you don't need people. You need a different set of skills. Somebody who used to fix a typewriter cannot fix a computer. So that is what, the equipment that they are using is much, much more sophisticated. So again, it will help with the sort of skills that could actually also be transferable from not just from one factory to another, but even from the industry, one industry to another industry. Somebody who fixes these machines, then they can go and fix a laser machine elsewhere outside the diamond cutting and polish industry. So that's the way we see automation leading to a bit more sustainability on this. It's also a question of perhaps the sizes of diamonds maybe moving towards the bigger sizes of diamonds. That's less people, but it's where concentration of IT would become very useful. The mandate let me also say, one of the things that happened, which was a pleasant surprise for the factories that started here, was the speed at which our people were able to pick up the cutting and polishing of diamonds. People that had not seen a diamond, 6 months later, they were able to produce very close to what is called XXX in the language of the industry. So the speed with which our people have picked up this is very, very amazing. The challenge of productivity is a different story. Yes, we do have productivity here and there. One of the factories, what they did, they got some of their best best performers, took them to India. This guy, when they got there, they found that they were, at the bottom of the heap. But they were able to very quickly learn and realize, when they came back, they realized that being best here, they're not among the best in India. That competition is what competition is about, and it's been very, very useful learning for those individuals. ODC mandate, simply price discovery. When we started ODC, it was really about price discovery, because for many years, 40 years plus, we've been selling diamonds, but we depended solely on my colleague here in terms of prices, So that really, for a start, that's really what ODC is about. Question from Rappaport. 2015, currently we're looking at just over 2,000 jobs. We've unfortunately lost almost half of the jobs. But I believe this is a phase that we will go over. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jacob. Maria, we had Sheila's question to you directly about the regional approach. Why does everybody need their own cutting and polishing? Why can't you regionalize it?
That, I think, is a really important question. And, in terms of the theme of cooperating all along, it would make perfect sense to have that. The thing is that it would need a very, very concerted effort among the SADC countries to really make that a priority, something they want to accomplish, to join forces and to have a unified set of policies in terms of the whole diamond industry, and especially in manufacturing. I don't know that it'll come to reality at any time soon, really, because, they've got to, each country's got to realize what it is that it wants, and, often it can't even decide within its own borders, never mind across borders. But the potential is there. we've just discussed now about training. In South Africa, there is a diamond training school, the Harry Oppenheimer Diamond Trading School, and I'm sure it's, you know, working under capacity. So there would be a way of, you know, training for not only within, for entrepreneurs within South Africa's borders, but beyond that as well, because we're not that far away. So that is an area that I think should definitely be looked at, and that governments should discuss, because it isn't something that cannot be achievable in the short term.
Thank you. Balisi, do you have anything to add about the sustainability, the long-term sustainability of beneficiation?
You want me to make a comment on that?
If you'd like to. Otherwise, I'll ask Paul if he wants to.
Long-term sustainability of the beneficiation. I think that we gotta take the lessons we've already accumulated within the diamond space, and start replicating similar to some of the core, I think, minerals we've been exploiting for a long time. The area of copper, nickel, and see what is possible, what's the art of the possible in that space. And I know that there is work and there's progress in that space. I think it's a question of, is it going to be sustainable as well? Because I think it's going to be sustainable, we need to build a core capability, a core competence in the country for beneficiating our minerals. And I think it needs to be looked as an integrated, in an integrated way, rather than just look at diamonds and look at copper and looking at that. Bring it all together and see what the art of the possible is. That will be my comment.
Thank you. Paul?
No, thanks. A couple of things. I think on my first point actually would be to just go back to Sheila's question on regional.
Yeah.
Because I think it's sustainability, it is a major part of it. We have sightholders who have factories in each of the 3 countries, but the movement of product is almost impossible to move between one country and another without incurring charges and costs, etc. Now, if I look at the competition, if I look at India and goods moving between Surat and out of Surat into Mumbai and out of Mumbai, there are no restrictions in our country maybe, and we have to think about where the competition is. If I look at the fact of our sightholders coming from India to Botswana, I think all credit to the Botswana government. Jakes, your team, you've created an incredible way of ensuring that work permits or visas are well established and given in multiple entries. Unfortunately, what we see is that in order to get to Botswana, you must travel through South Africa. And all of a sudden, we require transit visas. It may sound simple, but suddenly we can destabilize just a simple operation just through lack of the ability to travel of the major principles. So there are simple things that can be done. I do think we need to look at scale. We may not be able to do everything in every single country, but we may be able to specialize, and that's part of the flexibility that we've been able to introduce as partners, actually, along with the Diamond Hub, and as partners with our sightholders over this last year to ensure that sustainability is there going forward. That ultimately, it's about choosing the right clients. Effectively, it's about distribution. One must differentiate. Simply polishing and manufacturing today is very difficult to compete. You have to differentiate, and you differentiate through effective distribution, particularly downstream. So choosing the right partners for the future is also very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's take one more round of questions, if there are. So let's see who's been tweeting us questions. Chris.
So it's another question from Twitter from Rocky Goffa Modimo, and he's asked...
Okay, we can't hear. Can you speak up?
Rocky Goffa Modimo has asked, has the relocation achieved its objectives? And if not, what are the challenges?
Okay. That's one question. And the gentleman here. If we move a microphone right down. Yep, you sir.
I think mine is addressed to Thamage, the first one. The Mines and Minerals Act. Do we think the act as promulgated now, is it supportive for industrialization within the mines and mineral sphere? And would you say the Industrial Development Act, is it strong enough also to support the beneficiation? And maybe the last one to Bonyongo. Participation of Botswana generally in the mining sector, particularly now that DBS has sold to Anglo-American. And we hear that there is a restructuring of the mining sector in South Africa. Are we not likely to have the big brother take over all the downstream and other peripheral outsourcing that could be done by Botswana, and therefore lock Botswana out of the mining sector where we could be participating?
Okay, I don't really understand that. We might go back. You, sir, here. Just there, that gentleman there.
Good afternoon. My name is Vijay Kalyan Raman from Grant Thornton, Botswana. Mine is just a comment on to Sheila Kama's point on training initiatives. Just to add on what Thamage is mentioning, it's from a private sector perspective, we're aware that there are training sessions which is being planned by Boto University, which is specifically focused on cutting and polishing courses. And we as Grant Thornton have been facilitating in a small way in terms of connecting them with the site holders, in terms of making sure that the course content is relevant and will be accepted. There have been challenges in the process, but then I'm told that they're looking at commencing the training sometime by the first quarter of 2016, and it is right now with BQA for approval. So I thought I could just update that as such.
Okay, thank you for that addition. Gentleman right in the front here. Yeah, the gentleman with the lovely red tie. You, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Joshua Khalefrole from Julius Land Diamonds. I think my question has been asked by the previous speaker, but I just want to phrase it differently. If I heard Maria correctly, when she spoke about either some initiative involving the South African Chamber of Mines with DBS concerning the desire to bring in previously disadvantaged people into diamond beneficiation, and if that was the correct understanding, I was going to say to Paul that you spoke about the need to have an industry that is competitive, an industry that is sustainable, which is the aim of DBS in Botswana, as I understood it. But I was going to ask whether, in the same breath, isn't it appropriate for DBS in Botswana to consider how they could bring the resources and connect them to the society of Botswana in the same manner as is envisaged in South Africa?
Thank you very much. We have a question here, just down here. Please introduce yourselves only because we've got people who are live streaming who won't necessarily know who you are. So if you can just introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chairman. Ponasawa Kirikiro again. Mr. Bonyongo, you have just done a brilliant exposition of the thrusts of the partnership and what the partnership has achieved. Brilliant. But that is history. Would you like to venture on what institutional arrangements should we now put in place that can achieve almost an equivalent of what we have done before with particular reference to diamonds, but looking at the dynamics now of more minerals for the benefit of beneficiation, if you will, and also connecting resources and society?
Thank you very much. Very succinct question. Okay, there are two more and then we'll close. So, yeah, Ross, do introduce yourself. Three more and then we'll close. Ross, tell us who you are.
Ross Harvey, South African Institute of International Affairs. My question is general, but it's, are we not focusing too much on downstream beneficiation? Is there not opportunity both upstream and horizontally that Botswana should be looking at, especially in regional terms? Could it, for instance, become a new hub of of upstream expertise? And are we missing the boat, as it were? Thanks.
Thanks, Ross. There's a lady there, and then we'll go for the gentleman to my far left, and that's it.
Thank you. My name's Lungo Mutlabane from the Brenters Foundation. My question is just adding on to Mr. Kidikule's question, and it is for Mr. Bonyongo. It's about, you mentioned creating a mining knowledge economy, and maybe you could flesh this out a bit. What are the strategies in place? What's the implementation process? Are there any areas of specialization that Botswana could potentially focus on? Thank you.
Thank you. Another good question. And the final word to the question to the gentleman in the back.
Jacob, it's Vikram again from Bonus Botswana. You mentioned that price discovery was the mandate for Okavango Diamond Company. If that's the case, then surely Okavango Diamond should be purchasing diamonds and selling diamonds on a very regular basis to make the best and fully appreciate the highs and lows of rough diamond distribution.
Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is go down this panel, reverse order, and do feel free to answer the questions you want to answer. So Maria de Silva, over to you first.
I would actually like to respond to the question that was raised on what arrangements can be put in place currently to deal with issues that are relevant now and not just look at past achievements. And I do think that some of the critical areas have already been raised and need to be implemented, and that is to do with training to start with. We've heard about enterprise creation, but we also, which is in a more general sense, but we need specific training in the area of beneficiation, and so that we don't just have foreign manufacturers relocating to, where they're close to the source of diamonds, but you've got your own local entrepreneurs. So that is a key area that needs to be addressed, and which is within reach. And then within that as well is connecting trainees to entrepreneurs, established entrepreneurs, and then connecting them to markets so that they being sort of nurtured to not only cut and polish, but then to be able to sell on. So those are areas that do need to be addressed immediately because they've got relevance now and also going into the future, and will very much also address the need of creating a local critical mass of entrepreneurs. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but if not, do let me know.
Thanks very much, Maria. Balisi.
Thank you. These are very broad questions. Let me start with the Botswana, whether Botswana will not abandon support to local firms, contractors, with all sorts of things happening around us, and Anglo-American coming in and Big Brother crumbling. I think that's what you were saying. The one very assertive response to you is that no. In other words, we will continue to support local enterprise. In fact, if anything, we are intensifying our efforts to do so. We have very clear policies for doing that. And there are examples right now that are live on the ground that we are doing so. In fact, I think as a company, we've made it clear that going forward, even for sort of more intense scale projects, not just simply supply, projects that are much more meatier and bigger, we will start to look at capability of our citizen firms, whether they are locally based, mixed with people from outside, whichever combination, and give them projects in a very measured way, under very controlled environments, and allow them to grow. So it's an intention, and that intention, I'm sure in due time, it'll become much clearer how that will be done at a bigger scale. Certainly some companies are benefiting already from that. Secondly, Botswana is encouraging the Botswana Chamber of Mines through its what is called the Business Development Forum to increase the supply base in country for certain common things that we use as a mining industry, from BCL to Tati to ourselves, that those companies could reestablish here and produce from here to supply this country and forward into SADC. So we stand behind the Botswana Chamber of Mines in ensuring that that actually continues to improve. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Jacob.
Thank you. I think there was a question of whether the relocation has achieved its objectives.
Yep.
And yes, from where we stand, we think it has, we believe it has achieved its objectives, and it continues to do so. Some of the areas where perhaps there's still a lot more work to be done, we had, and we still hope that the tourism would pick up partly because of the relocation. It's an area that we continue to look at and would like to see perhaps more tourism picking up because of the relocation. But so far, the relocation has achieved the objective for which it was set up. The Mines and Minerals Act, we do not believe that the Act in any way inhibits industrialization. In fact, if you look at the Fraser Institute based in Canada, for years, they've rated us as among the best. They do this annually. So we've not seen anything that inhibits industrialization in terms of that act.
Thank you. Paul.
I think I'll just expand a little bit on the relocation, of course. It also depends on the lens you're looking through, but I would agree with Jacob. I think, if anything, we would say from a De Beers perspective, we exceed our expectations. Having seamlessly, if you like, transferred our sales functions, which had operated for almost 100 years out of central London to Botswana, and it literally was a seamless transition. The fears of many have not transpired, and certainly we see our customers coming through on a regular basis. So that, along with skills transfer, I think we've seen the infrastructure that came through the system in advance of that and the preparation. So I would say it's been a great success. To Jacob's point, though, the real test will be the foreign direct investment that comes into the long-term future. And that's not going to happen overnight anyway. And I think we need to be constantly looking towards that, and how do we encourage it, and how do we embrace it here in Botswana. So generally speaking, yes, I'd say we certainly met, if not exceeded. On the point of, I think it was Ross who was talking a little bit from what Balisi said there, are we concentrating too much on the downstream? Well, I think certainly with the likes of Tokafala and those type of initiatives where we're really looking to get involved in supply chain, the upstream side of the business, and what I would say one of the real successes or success factors that we require for beneficiation is entrepreneurship within Botswana, and that's trying to encourage that, it's trying to support it, and I think we're well down the line of doing that into the future. The last question I think that I was picking up was around the Chamber of Mines, Maria, that you mentioned with some conversations coming out of the conference with De Beers. We're very early on. I think what we have in South Africa is quite a well-established cottage industry that's been there for many decades. And clearly that's been having difficulties in achieving supply over these last number of years, and that's something that we are in conversation with the Chamber of Mines and the Ministry of Mines on how we can perhaps do something to help support that. In addition, we've also got some previously disadvantaged South African demonteurs that have got well-established businesses, and again, what we're looking for there is to how we can help support him from an incubator perspective to see them come through to the future. I do come back, it will all be about distribution, distribution, distribution. In order to be successful, we need to differentiate and have that distribution in place, and we'll work with all of our customers, and there's no reason why we wouldn't look to operate here in Botswana in a similar fashion as well. I'm sorry, Vijay, I wasn't quite sure what your question was. I didn't really pick up Vijay's question here. Okay.
There was a comment. Yep. All right.
Sorry.
Yep, please.
Respond to the question to Rekitikile.
Yep.
Okay. I think the point you're making about that the past does not necessarily mean that the solutions that we had will serve us well for the future, and that we do need to perhaps build on what the partnership has produced as human capital and think forward. I agree totally, and I think that's why I spoke earlier about mining knowledge services. I can conclude safely, say that we've built a lot of open cast mining experience. We've built very solid ore processing, geotech, hydro, all sorts of experiences in the area of mining. And I think going forward, from a company strategy, from a country strategy point of view, I am submitting that I think as we go Vision 2036 and stuff, that we do need to look at the knowledge-based economy, that this country must start setting itself up to service the rest of the world, not just Africa actually, and that mining knowledge services can lead. There has to be some lead here, and I think that we have the capacity and the capability and have demonstrated it. And as the mines come to an end, that end must yield a new source of income that is pretty much international, pretty much export. And I see that coming from mining knowledge services. How we will structure that going into the future must be a subject of discussion at both policy and operational level. So I would want to leave it as such, but I think it's something that I hold a passion for, to participate in live debates around structuring something like this, and not fear, perhaps feeling that it may never be accepted. I think that the Rwandas, the DRCs, and the Congos are waiting for us to lead. And I think we're leading at legislation. They come in to copy that, but there's more that we can offer. I'd rather leave it at that. I hope I've answered you.
Balisi, Jacob, Paul, and Maria, thank you very much for encouraging a very robust debate and discussion here. So I think we've got food for thought and ideas in terms of moving ahead of how to add further value and harness beneficiation for diversification. So thank you to the panel and thank you to the audience. There's coffee now, so you're most welcome. And let's show the customary appreciation to the panel. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.